All right. If you are in the probate market as a probate specialist, or perhaps you even find yourself as a personal representative, the administrator or executor of the state, or perhaps you just need support finding people who are connected to certain estates, this is the podcast for you. This is the man that is doing amazing things as a tool, as an asset and resource to folks who need that support. I'm so excited to meet with him. I'm here with Michael Zwick from Asset International. How are you doing, Michael?
Doing great, Courtney. Glad to be here.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. I'll introduce myself. I'm Courtney with the Life and Transitions Experts podcast. I'm the host as well as the founder and owner of Estate Pro Service. Both are dedicated to helping people through the probate and the estate planning process while generating income and wealth through real estate. And my favorite thing to do is have conversations with life and transitions experts because it's the way that we're going to continue to help people through some of those biggest changes and challenges in their life. And that's one thing that Michael does. So I'm excited about this call. I have to shout out to Bill Gross over at Probate Weekly because it was through him that I was able to find you and connect with you. So shout out to Bill and all the awesome thing he's doing over at Probate Weekly. But Michael, please, can you introduce yourself and share what you actually do? You probably definitely do it better than I could give it justice. So please share with folks who you are and what you do.
Well, very briefly, Courtney, I am an attorney turned private investigator. As you could see, the probate PI, because I specialize in the probate world, finding missing heirs and probate assets, missing heirs. We help out executors or trustees where they can't find or identify everyone who's entitled. Also, we work with real estate investors or real estate buyers who might want to purchase a property where they know the owner has died, but they don't know where the heirs are, so they can work out a deal. So we do that as well. In terms of assets, again, some people, unfortunately, too many people take their information about what they own to the grave, and we'll help
Mhm.
to find those assets for them.
So this is just invaluable for folks who, particularly folks who are as real estate professionals or real estate investors. We know that we often make our money and at the buy, and quite often we have to find folks who are sometimes in some form of distress because that's one of the ways of solving problems that we're able to get the property, earn the right to have the property at a discount. And definitely one of the problems that I've run into many times, and I wish I had met you a couple years ago, and I know people run into is finding the heirs. How common is that for folks? How common is it for folks to just let a property or let thing go because they're not able to find a particular heir? Do you? I mean, yeah. How booming is I guess business for you?
So the real estate area is definitely a growing area of business for us within the last year or so. I really, frankly, don't have statistics. I just kind of
Yeah.
work when we get a case that comes in. But it definitely happens. I mean, especially with society the way being it is now, with every people moving apart, people growing older, but sometimes they don't have children, so their next of kin might be their first cousins, who might not necessarily be in touch with, like I have a number of first cousins, some of whom I'm very much in touch with, and some of whom I haven't spoken with in years. No bad blood. It's just different lives, different ages, different geography. So it's just part of life. It's not a matter of the heirs leaving behind the real estate that they don't know about so much as it is they don't even know they're entitled to a share of it in the first place.
That is a great point. I was actually speaking to a client yesterday, and he was just disturbed because he said his father assumed, like a lot of us assumed, that we're going to live forever and didn't have his estate in place. And there's folks who, because of intestate law, have right or title to some of the property because of a what he thought was a divorce, but didn't go through, and children who were part of her family, and they don't aren't connected. So I may have to actually connect you with them to see how you might be able to support them because, again, this thing happens more common than not. How did you find yourself entering this world coming from the space of being an attorney? How did this say, okay, this is where I'm going to hang my hat and really serve people?
So I was practicing law, and many years ago, more than I like to admit, a friend came to me, realizing that there's money sitting in government treasuries, just unclaimed property or other government treasuries that's just sitting there waiting to be claimed. And we started our business as a little bit of side hustle before side hustle was even a thing.
Yeah.
After about 2 years, he and I and another partner, we realized we were onto something, and we just closed our whatever our day jobs were and went full time. And
Wow.
that was about 20 years ago. And then we kept growing and adding to the markets we were working in. You're realizing after a while doing the unclaimed property that we should go kind of upstream in terms of where the money's coming from and deal with missing heirs in probate cases.
Okay. Okay, that makes okay. Good. All right. Well, it's interesting because one of my biggest fans on my channel is my mom, and she's always
Isn't that always the president of everyone's fan
right.
club?
Hey, number one fan, right? But she's always like every other year sending me information saying, "Hey, you need to check out this unclaimed asset, or these unclaimed, yeah, assets." How do you distinguish yourself from? I mean, I'm not even sure if there's actually scams, but I mean, I'm sure that people may be suspicious when they are contacted by someone saying, "Hey, did you know that you own this piece of land or you have this right to this property there?" Do you deal with that a lot? And if so, how do you address that?
Yeah, one of the I guess mantras in our company for a long time has been that our biggest competition is not another company; it's skepticism. So
Yeah.
we've worked really hard to establish our credentials. So people can come to our website; they can see all the coverage we've gotten from positive news coverage we've received from very well-known publications like the Washington Post, the Detroit Free Press, that have
Right.
featured us and showed we're a legitimate operation. We tout the fact that we have an A+ rating with Better Business Bureau. We're licensed private investigation firms. We're bonded and insured. We have licensed attorneys on staff, and we don't always meet with our clients face to face, but every so often, some people need that assurance by meeting someone up close and personal. So if that's what's necessary, we'll do that. Wherever we go, I've flown many places to go meet with people, just to make them feel comfortable that I'm a real person and not some,
Wow.
quote Nigerian prince.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, hey, you have this. You just need to send this money to me, and you'll receive it. Yeah. So you're a national, as you said earlier, and that's pretty awesome. And folks, if you're watching this or if you listen to this on a podcast, feel free to go check out the Life and Transitions Expert podcast or the links, because you'll see not only our beautiful faces, but sharing some of the screen. Yeah, I see a lot. You have Washington Post, Detroit Jewish News, the Detroit Business. Yeah, you're all over the place here. I'm looking at the Asset International's website here. So yeah, and the A+ rating Business Bureau. That's pretty awesome, man. Yeah, and I can imagine the skepticism is uh, like, hey, you have something that could be of a tool or use for you. Just a heads up. So what is how's your pay scale? How does that work if someone wanted to work with you? Um, I guess if they're coming to you saying, "Hey, I need a personal representative. I need support finding these heirs. I'm the representative," or whatever the case. What does it look like when it's tapping your services?
So we work strictly on contingency fee basis.
Oh wow,
So when
cool.
it comes
Yeah.
to finding heirs, basically our model in very simplistic terms is we find them, we'll say to them, hey, we've located money or other assets you're entitled to. In exchange for a
Mhm.
percentage, we'll tell you where it is and we'll get it for you. When it comes to doing asset recovery, we're working from the opposite perspective where we don't know what's out there. And someone comes to us, so the executor will hire us to do an asset search, not only do an asset search, but also do the legwork to recover those assets and get them turned over to the executor. And again, we work on a contingency basis, so we can only get paid a percentage of what we deliver.
Oh wow. Okay, that's pretty good. So you either it's all going to be a conversation up front beforehand, and so contingency based.
Yeah, so
That's good to know.
we'll talk to, especially for the asset recovery. When it comes to finding the owners, we already know the assets there, so we don't have to we obviously have to make sure
Right.
we're contacting and signing the right person. When it comes to doing the asset recovery, we'll obviously do a little bit of due diligence to uh, determine whether it's a worthwhile case for us. If they call us, if throughout in the conversation we find out that the person who passed away was only, say, early 20s, or never worked a day in his or her life, we probably won't take that case because the odds of us
Uh,
finding assets that are out there are minimal.
well, that seems to be you know, that's where you establish a trustworthy, business, not just taking on any person who's willing to, throw some funds or some time towards you. I'm pretty sure it saves you time as well. Um, so how do you get people to know about you and about the work? How do people are able to find you?
So most of our work comes from probate attorneys
Hmm.
or people who are in the probate world. Could be obviously people like you or Bill that you mentioned before who are actively dealing with probate assets. So we will. I'm very active on LinkedIn and in
I was
network.
going to mention that. Yeah.
Network a lot. I'm a member of networking organizations. So just kind of getting that word of mouth really more than anything else. Obviously, when we do get some good media, then it's obviously that can cause a spike in interest where people find out us. We had an article once about us in the Detroit Free Press about our services, and a few days later, a gentleman who was the trustee of his deceased neighbor came up to me and says, "I can't find one of the nephews, and I saw the article about you. Can you find this nephew for us?" And it was about a $500,000 inheritance that had to be
Oh
handed out,
wow.
and we were able to find the guy and get him his what he was due.
People, if you're a practitioner, it's almost like your duty to be loud. If you have services like Michael, or you have services that you're providing, people need to know about it. If it's just tucked away in the corner, no one's going to know about it. I'm a victim of not using LinkedIn as well as I should. I try to plant a bunch of seeds in, with the content even here, and people are finding me there. But I've just even just my limited time on LinkedIn, I see you all over the place. What has there been some? Well, I guess the two questions. One, if could you give it? Because one, you've already given me advice on how to use, or when I share my links, how LinkedIn and other social media platforms prefer those to be shared. So I really appreciate you being so open and generous with that. Could you give us other entrepreneurs or small business owners tips on how to utilize a platform like LinkedIn to get your voice out effectively?
Right. So first of all, as you alluded to, LinkedIn, and I think the other, I should say, LinkedIn is the one I know the best. I know somewhat of
Mhm.
Facebook. Facebook's more kind of a plaything than a business tool so much. And then the other, I really don't do Instagram or TikTok at all. Whether I should is a different story. But I can tell you for LinkedIn,
TikTok.
LinkedIn algorithms hate links in the post themselves in the actual
Mhm.
post because naturally they're afraid that it'll lead someone away from LinkedIn to another site and then they'll come back. They want to keep you there.
Ah.
So the key when posting a link to an article or a video or whatever is to reference it in the post and then say it'll be in the comments and then put it in the comments itself because the algorithms don't ding you for that. So that's one thing I would say. I would also say if you're in a um, role or occupation where people need to trust you. You're not
Mhm.
just selling a widget. You got to put yourself out there. Let them know you. Let them trust you. People do business with people they like and people they trust. So put
Right.
yourself out there. If you notice my posts, it's probably not hard to tell. I do not hire someone to do that.
No,
A lot of
but
like
it's natural.
I make sure to have my pictures of me every so often, just so people know who I am and they kind of establish my brand as like who I am. The fact that I wear t-shirts, mostly college t-shirts. Today's South Florida. Um,
Ah, cool.
you can see there's selfies I take on my phone. I don't have any. I mean, I have professional headshot as was shown earlier when you posted on my on the screen, but it's just about being yourself. Get your own style. Some people are very big with videos. I'll tell you, when I first for a while I did videos every day. Don't make them too long. Be natural. When I first did them, I was awful. I was terrible because I was literally reading a script that I had taped under the camera and I was reading it. I was reading it like this. And a friend of mine said, talk to the camera like you're talking to me across the table. Be
Oh,
animated, joke, laugh, use your hands, whatever.
yeah.
And it made all the difference in the world. I don't do the videos so much anymore because it's just a little more time. I applaud you, Courtney, because
Right.
I know you do them pretty regularly. You do great ones. Um, so those are some, and also find groups, find where your audience or target market target audience, for lack of better terms, hanging out. There's so many groups on LinkedIn. Um, you can do a word search, for probate or real estate or whatever, and find the ones that fits for you. Obviously, you want to go to the group state of activity. If you do, there are tons of probate groups, for example, some of
Hmm.
which have 10 or 20 members, and some of which have tens of thousands of members. And there's regular activity in there. And don't be afraid to reach out to the people in there and start establishing connections.
That is awesome, man. I really applaud you too, man, because I think I mean it seems like it's a self-evident truth that authenticity. Everybody has a BS meter, and people are looking for authenticity,
Yeah,
and competence doesn't mean you're buttoned up and suited and booted and throwing out jargons and things of that nature. It is like I think authenticity can show that we are real humans, and that's something that people will trust
yeah,
more, and that leads then you can lead and share the competence
yeah. And
to
one
the
last thing I would say is
yeah.
is don't jump into sales mode right away.
Yeah.
Someone I've heard it compare that LinkedIn is basically a massive, never-ending virtual networking event. So
Hmm.
act there like you would in a networking event. You
I've
wouldn't go up
considered
to
that.
someone at a networking event, literally walk up to them and say, "Here's my card, buy my product."
Hmm.
You
Right.
you introduce yourself, you get to know them, you find out what they need, let them get to know you. Then you can get into sales mode. I'm amazed at how many people just automatically launch a sales mode, and I really wonder, maybe I'm missing the boat. Maybe it does work for them, but I can't imagine it does.
I think another thing that I heard you say that I'm going to pull from it too is that you mentioned that Facebook was your playground, but LinkedIn is really like where you're sitting. Because like if you're out here thinking about where to go, it may just be possible to pick one and really nail it and figure out what that rhythm of that flow is. Still being authentic to yourself, but what that flow. Because Instagram may be a little different from TikTok, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, and from YouTube. Because it's also maybe a way for someone not to feel overwhelmed. But you definitely have. It seems like you got LinkedIn down, and I need to look into that more because I mean, people are there to do business, and
Yeah.
what's one thing that surprised you about? Oh, I'm sorry, you can.
Yeah, go ahead and go ahead.
No, no, I was just going to ask you what's one thing that surprised you about your LinkedIn. I mean, you did mention the Detroit and getting that press, and I mean, I'm sure you put it on LinkedIn. But what's one thing that surprised you about your activity on LinkedIn connected to the work you're doing?
Um, it wasn't really a surprise. I mean, I think it, like everything else, it comes down to, for the most part, you get what you put into it. Sometimes the surprise are more day to day, which I've come not I'm not no longer surprised by them, but the ups and downs of LinkedIn. I have some posts that I put up there that I just think of as a throwaway, and it gets tremendous activity, and then I'll have a post
Mhm.
that's like, well, this is a really good one, and it just
Yeah.
dies on the vine. It's and it bums me out. What's good though is that if you think it's a good one that just got beaten up by the algorithms that day, you can always repost it, a few weeks later,
Okay.
and almost nobody will even know the difference. And even if they do, most people are pretty cool about going like, yeah, I've seen that one before, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to call them out for it.
I dig it. I can dig that. That's good to know. And so, what about as far as helping people, finding assets or helping people, complete what they need to complete on their end when it comes to air search? What are some of like? Do you have a? What are some of the, I guess, rewarding stories that you've or themes that you've come across that's like, this is why I do this. Besides, I'm
So
sure
I
the
had one I actually
compensation.
just posted about. It must have been on Tuesday after Toby
Uh-huh.
Keith died, because I'm a big Toby Keith fan,
Hmm.
and I posted about the kind of tied it. I'm pretty good about tying various things into what I do,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it tied into the fact of I met a there's a client, probably one of my most memorable cases, that again, we were going back to the needing to meet someone face to face to overcome the skepticism. Basically, the client lives in Dallas. He was. So, let me back up. A woman died, no known heir. She was worth about $500,000. They didn't know who the heirs were. We did a lot of research. I was in Oklahoma for work, in central Oklahoma, Ada, which is outside Oklahoma City, And my team calls me and says, okay, we found what we believe to be the sole heir of the state. He lives in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to tie this to Toby Keith, don't worry.
Oh yeah,
He
no.
says, we found sole heir in Dallas. So again, the phone with him, the guy says, you know what, I'm not really sure about this. And I looked it up. I said, Dallas to Ada is about 3 hours away. I says, let's meet halfway. So we'll meet over drinks or coffee, whatever. You'll get to know me. You'll see I'm a good guy. I'm trustworthy. So we wound up meeting in, I think it's called Thackerville, Oklahoma. This in the middle of nowhere. There's this massive casino complex in the middle of nowhere, and we met at Toby Keith's. I love this bar and grill. And we had drinks, and I, had this very memorable meeting with this guy who turns out he was more, I guess, homeless from the standpoint of he didn't have his own place. He was basically living out his van, couch surfing at friends' houses. And I told him that on the one hand, his cousin, who we had not seen a number of years, had passed away, and he was the last remaining family member. He was the last man standing, which obviously was very emotional for him. But I was able to soften the blow by telling him that he's going to inherit $500,000. And that obviously, changed his life in terms of being able to, change his way of living. The interesting thing was I asked him, I said,
Wow.
what are you going to do with all this money? He says, I think I'm going to fix up my van. And I was like,
Yeah.
it was really interesting to see that perspective of his, whether he hadn't fully wrapped his brain around things or
Right.
whether that's just like, that was the number one priority. Who knows what was going through his mind. But it was a really memorable meeting.
Oh, man, that is life changing, man. That's, I mean, challenging to hear. You're the last person, but to have that all of a sudden, those funds available. Is there any type of like host, like, connection to assets and all, or like referrals or support that you give to people, or that you recommend that people at least consider when they come across like all of a sudden new money, Does that make
Yes.
sense?
So,
Yeah.
I had another client once who, um, his father passed away while his mother was pregnant with him, and the father didn't realize it because at the time it was worthless when the father died, but later, 40 years later, it turns out that he owned mineral interests that became very valuable. And all of a
Wow.
sudden, this guy who was living in the backwoods of Arkansas on, trailer that wasn't even his, and didn't even have a driver license, all of a sudden he's now coming into $250,000 plus a recurring revenue stream of oil, royalties from the oil and gas company. And he said
Wow.
to me, he says, what should I do with this money? I said, before you do anything, you need to talk to an estate planning attorney. You need to talk to an accountant and make sure you're doing things right. Financial planner, especially like in his case where he was, I think he was married but had no kids, and per Texas, the property was in Texas. So under Texas law, if someone inherits real estate, the surviving spouse only gets to use the real estate, including mineral interests, for as long as she's alive. But then it goes to his heirs. His only heir was his brother, who he was
Mm,
estranged from. I said, "Do you want your brother to inherit this?" And he said, and he said,
yeah.
"No." I said, "Then your half brother." I said, "Then you better get yourself a good will to make sure that your wife gets to inherit this after you're gone." So,
Absolutely, man.
fortunately, he took my advice and was able to, get those affairs in order.
Man, that is awesome. Yes, if you're listening to this, go speak to an estate attorney. You can reach out to Michael, or you can reach out to me, and I'm
Yeah,
sure Michael has tons of connections. I have
yeah,
relationships with Trust and Wills, who's basically can set up the documents for you. But if you want a more comprehensive, then definitely check out Michael, or even me,
yeah.
and we'll connect you, because you really, from my understanding, I want to be able to control things, but I don't want to own anything, particularly when I pass away. And there's illegal instruments that can allow things to be set in the space or the way that you want it set in, and you can avoid these. But if I have any can out there, I don't want anyone to pass away. But Mike, if you ever give me a call and tell me I have $500,000 coming, I'll be I won't be too. I'll just deal with it then. Let's just say that. Let's say that. But how can people connect with you if they outside of this, if they're either a practitioner and want to just learn more about what you're doing, or if they really need your services? What's the best way for folks to
Thanks
reach
for
out to you?
asking. So they can email me at mzwick@assetsinternational.com, or they can reach me on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to find on there. Fortunately, I got on there long ago that I think, if I remember correctly, my URL is linkedin.com/Michael Zwick or Michael J. Zwick. I don't remember which one it is. And they can always call 248-557-4960.
Two four eight
And
five five. I'm sorry, 248
557
557
4960.
4960. And that's M Zwick at assetsinternational.com.
Correct.
All right, awesome. Sorry, and you the other one you're gonna say? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, that was it.
Oh, let's see. Did this work? I'm trying to see if I'm woohoo, I'm playing with this live
Hey,
stream. So yeah, it's
your
rolling
mom's
it
going to
right
be so
there.
proud of you.
Yeah, she's gonna be excited
Or
about it.
I
She
should
gives me
say,
the thumbs
even
up.
prouder.
Yes. So we'll also put that in the show notes as well. I definitely want to be mindful of your time. What are some other, or at least what's something else you would leave our the audience with or folks with that maybe I didn't ask you as you're thinking about this whole nebulous of the probate world and probate PI and assets and unknown finding
If
assets.
if like I said, you just one of the things I say is, there's the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. And conversely, there just because there's not a will does not mean there's not a way.
Oh
When someone does
man.
that a will, you can still have an estate. You can, you the heirs are determined by the state as to who the heirs are. And if you're the executor, you have a role to fill, and that is to make sure that you find all the heirs and find all the assets. And also, when it comes to buying real estate, you want to buy a property. Just because you can't find the owners doesn't mean you're out of luck. You still might be able to find them through someone like me, and
Yep.
get a good deal.
Well, that's sweet. And I folks, I did cut you off when you were mentioning your let's see, can I put it in here? Dang it. Michael Zwick at LinkedIn. All you have to do is put in Michael Zwick and you'll be able to find him on LinkedIn. There's some awesome posts. If you want to, they call it post hacking. I'm definitely going to be looking at how you interweave like just natural things. I'm seeing here a half marathon, coming back from Israel, all type of stuff. That's a really cool way to just make yourself be authentic and also,
Yeah, I
share
mean,
with all the awesome stuff you're doing
for
there.
most of us, there are only so many things you can say about your business.
Right.
Uh, so you got to find you have to be a little creative.
Hey, well, you definitely have that, man. I really appreciate you giving me your time.
But
I hope
I
the audience
appreciate having me.
appreciated it. Yeah, go find them. And folks, I would love if you like this content, hit the like, subscribe. It helps the algorithms, helps people see more of it and share and serve with more folks. So really appreciate that. And other than that, this is the Life in Transitions Experts podcast, LITE. Let your light shine. Cheers.
Have a great day.